Welcome to this explainer. Okay, we have absolutely all been there. You're just sitting there staring at a screen, waiting for a text from that one person who is completely maddeningly inconsistent, right? Like 1 minute they are all in, and the next they've just vanished into thin air. So why do we crave the very people who confuse and frustrate us the most? Why does emotional unavailability feel like an absolute magnet? Well, today we are going to solve this mystery, and we're going to do it using the science of psychology, neurobiology, and evolution.
I know, it's a pretty harsh reality check. But bursting the whole love at first sight myth is exactly what we need to do today. You see, we often romanticize our anxiety. We convince ourselves that if we are thinking about someone nonstop, well, it must be destiny. But what you're actually feeling might not be a cosmic connection at all. Your intense longing is very likely just a biological glitch, and your brain is simply reacting to uncertainty.
Section 1. The uncertainty illusion.
Let's walk through exactly how this happens. Minute 1, you send a text, and you feel good. But then, 2 hours later, you're still waiting, and you start overanalyzing literally every previous interaction. 5 hours go by, and you finally get a reply, but it's super brief and completely ambiguous. Then, right around the 6-hour mark, you experience this massive, sudden wave of relief and obsession. The sheer agony of that disappearing typing bubble actually fuels your fixation. You aren't necessarily obsessed with the person, you are obsessing over the gap between their messages.
Section 2. Your brain on mixed signals.
According to some incredibly revealing findings from Harvard Medical School, when you get those mixed signals, your brain is flooded with dopamine. That's your privative reward circuit lighting up. But at the exact same time, cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes, essentially marshaling your body to cope with a crisis. Meanwhile, your serotonin levels completely plummet, and low serotonin, that is exactly what precipitates those maddeningly preoccupying, obsessive thoughts. Your brain is literally mimicking the euphoria and the intense craving of addictive substances like drugs or alcohol.
And this biological chaos leads us to a really fascinating concept called misattribution of arousal. When you unpack the classic Schachter and Singer experiments, it reveals that people can actually make a physiological mistake. Imagine your heart is racing, your palms are sweaty, you feel short of breath, all because you're stressed and anxious about where you stand with someone. Well, your brain looks at those physical symptoms and totally mislabels that fear and anxiety as deep romantic passion. Basically, your brain is actively tricking you into interpreting relationship anxiety as a profound romantic connection.
Section 3. The hard-to-get effect.
Researchers from the University of Rochester actually studied the whole playing hard-to-get mating strategy, and the findings are super revealing. When a potential partner is inconsistent, it triggers these evolutionary cues that artificially inflate their value. It basically creates an illusion of high demand. Because they are harder to catch, it drives you to expend much greater effort in pursuit, which directly heightens their perceived sexual desirability. They seem more valuable simply because they aren't easily available. Otherwise, you'd probably just perceive them as desperate.
Section 4. The anxiety loop. So, this entire trap is built on something called intermittent reinforcement. Psychologist Robert Sternberg actually uses the analogy of addiction to explain the motivational model of passion here. Think about it. If you got a validating text message every single time you reached out, you'd habituate to it. It'd be boring. But getting that message only some of the time? That acts as an intermittent reward. It keeps your brain constantly guessing, totally hooked on the chase, and makes the behavior incredibly difficult to break.
Research from Liberty University connects this loop directly to attachment theory. Biologically, here is exactly how the trap plays out. First, ambiguous behavior, like say a delayed text, is immediately perceived as a relational threat. Second, your brain's amygdala hyperactivates, which triggers a really deep fear of abandonment. Third, you engage in obsessive reassurance seeking. For anxiously attached individuals, this delayed response is misinterpreted as outright rejection. It triggers an exhausting biological fight-or-flight response where you are constantly seeking validation just to alleviate your insecurities.
Section 5. Real love versus obsession.
When you're in an anxious attachment loop, you are hyper-vigilant to minor behaviors, constantly needing reassurance, and idealizing your partner because of this missing piece syndrome. But genuine connection? That lives in secure attachment. This is marked by emotional regulation, calm, and mutual trust. It thrives on stable intimacy and constructive conflict resolution. Healthy partnerships are built on open, supportive communication, not the chaotic, exhausting distress of guessing games.
Sternberg's triangular theory of love shows exactly why obsession just isn't built to last. That sharp, instantaneous spike of passionate arousal at the very beginning of a relationship inevitably drops, and it habituates to a baseline over time.
Intense obsession is biologically designed to be temporary. You simply cannot sustain that dopamine and cortisol high forever without completely burning out.
And this is why we really have to distinguish between infatuated love and consummate love. Infatuated love, what we so often call love at first sight, is essentially just high passion with low intimacy and low commitment. It relies entirely on that initial, unstable spike we just talked about. Consummate love, however, is the complete integration of intimacy, passion, and conscious commitment. While passion operates completely outside of our control, true consummate love requires stabilizing elements. You actually have to actively build intimacy and make a conscious commitment to the partnership.
Section 6. Breaking the cycle.
So, to actually escape this mixed signals trap, you need actionable steps. First, recognize that you are caught in an intermittent reinforcement dopamine loop. Your brain is craving a chemical, not necessarily a person. Second, identify your misattributed arousal. Realize that your intense anxiety is just disguising itself as passion. Third, shift your focus to the decision and commitment component of love. Sternberg points out that this is the one single component you have considerable conscious control over. You can simply decide not to pursue a destructive dynamic. And finally, remember that Harvard researchers note this chemical roller coaster naturally calms within 1 to 2 years. You can absolutely use your rational decision-making power right now to override your brain's primitive addiction-like cravings.
I want to leave you with this one. Provocative final thought. Challenge yourself to reevaluate your current romantic fixation through the lens of all the science we just unpacked today. Ask yourself honestly, are you truly chasing a genuine emotional connection? Or is your brain just desperately craving its next unpredictable drop of dopamine? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this helps you find clarity in your connections moving forward.